All right, welcome everyone to Disrupting with Purpose. Today we will talk about I'm Quincy Poe, the co-lead of the Twin Cities Opportunity Youth Network with Christy Snyder. Opportunity Youth are youth experiencing homelessness, youth who are in foster care, youth who are parenting, and youth who are in our justice system, as well as young people who are disconnected from school or work, ages 15 to 24 years old. Today, we're going to talk about expungement. We're also going to hear about expungement. We're going to have a couple of panels, one on lived experience and a systems panel. And we're also going to hear from individuals who have had their records expunged. Many people may believe this myth that when you're 18, your juvenile records are wiped clean and you can pursue any career that you want into your adulthood. But it's far from the truth, and we're going to hear about that today. So now I want to take this moment to introduce the host with the most. She's phenomenal, she's fun, she's funny, and she's a boss. And now to you, Miss Lissa Jones.
Well, my goodness, Quincy, I can't say thank you enough for such a rising star. To say that about me means a great deal. I thank you. Welcome, everybody, to Disrupting with Purpose. Quincy started us off with wonderful energy. We're going to need it for our conversation today. I also love the way that it was framed in opportunity youth. Yes, all of our youth have opportunity, and we want them to have opportunities everywhere. So let's go ahead and get started. We've got our guest today. Well, let me start over. Our guest today will come to us first by video performance. His name is Louis Blaze. We're hopeful that Mr. Blaze will be able to join us on a panel a little bit later in our presentation. But for now, he's dropping in by video. I hope you'll enjoy.
I turn the TV on, look at the times that we facing. Yeah, check it. My little homie told me he just need a quick dollar. I understand, cause really I feel the same way. My big homie told me that a slow nickel is better than a fast dime, cause it's all about the path you take. You see, a barrel was never made for a crab, just like a cage was never made for a human god. These people feeding off everything that we have with hidden agendas and the power of influence. I was down, I was ruined, running around with the fluid, lighting fire after fire, lost desire to be a student. Found my way into the block at the crib, it was hard to eat. Started living in a box, jacking when I hit the streets. I was acting way different than the way my mama raised me. So when I called her from that cell, shit was really crazy. Only 16, why they EJJ me? Waiting for me to fail, but that ain't faze me. Recognize placement, yeah. Sitting in the silence, then I turn the TV on. Look at the times that we facing, yeah. Trauma from the violence still living in my bones. Got no time to be complacent, yeah. That's the enemy of progression I'm steady putting on. Taking time, I ain't racing, yeah. Pacing myself with patience, cause it's a marathon. 5 years on probation, with 5 years over my head. From 16 to 21, I was fed to the system of corrections. Just another number on the checklist, cause the problems on my life wasn't corrected. For real, still impacted by the drugs, alcohol, and a lack of funds. A broken home with kin folk really showing love. Swear if I never found a school that had a studio, honestly it was hard to even see me really showing up. Started growing up and learning more with my experience. Peep the way the game is played, now I'm feeling curious. Seriously been furious, we trapped and we don't even know. Stuck inside a cycle of survival where anything goes. All my kings rapping, playing ball, or selling dope. Or be false prophets with non-profits, profit off of selling hope. Receiving jewels, show no pity to fools. In the city of sin, #1 rule is to recognize placement, yeah. Yeah, sitting in the silence, then I turn the TV on. Look at the times that we facing. Yeah, trauma from the violence still living in my bones. Got no time to be complacent. Yeah, that's the enemy of progression. I'm steady putting on, taking time, I ain't racing. Yeah, pacing myself with patience, cause it's a marathon. Recognize placement. Yeah. Sitting in the silence, then I turn the TV on. Look at the times that we facing. Yeah. Trauma from the violence still living in my bones. Got no time to be complacent. Yeah. That's the enemy of progression. I'm steady putting on, taking time, I ain't racing. Yeah. Pacing myself with patience, cause it's a marathon.
That was performing artist Louis Blaze. There is so much there that I'm very hopeful that Louis will be able to join us in the panel to unpack a little bit about that. I hope that I can see that again. It's now my privilege to introduce to you our next presenter. His name is Andrew Keats, and he's going to bring us his National Landscape presentation. Welcome, Andrew.
Hi, really happy to be here. It's such an important topic, talking about juvenile records. So just to introduce myself a little, I'm a staff attorney with Juvenile Law Center. We're located in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. We're the first public interest law firm dedicated to children in the country, founded in 1975. But this issue of juvenile records for us, we didn't really start focusing on until probably about 2013, as we kept hearing from juvenile and youth advocates that we work with. We have our own youth advocacy program within our organization, and a lot of them were running into issues with their records, getting them expunged and or running into problems getting employment or housing or applying to college. And we realized that this is an issue. I think with a lot of people, and myself included, came in to the work with informed by the myth that you have mostly a clean slate when you turn 18, and it's just not really true. And what we've seen, really in the last few decades, in addition to mass incarceration, after 9/11, we saw a huge move to advance the sharing of data and record information among law enforcement agencies and other government agencies for protection and safety reasons, certainly out of fear. But also we have the internet age, where any document that's out there that's on that's available somewhere in digital form is potentially going to get shared or end up places where it's not supposed to be. So we've seen a real movement away from what was started as part of the juvenile justice system. There was a real belief in confidentiality as a real bedrock of ensuring the best interests of the child can be met to help foster positive, productive lives and rehabilitation, which was the goal of the juvenile system. So in 2013 and 14, we conducted a 50-state survey of the juvenile records laws of all the states in the country. And following that, we put out a report scoring the states on their records laws. How well do they protect and maintain the confidentiality of those youth who come into the system? And what we found was not very well. The vast majority of states were really failing to protect youth record information. And after we had these findings, we then started digging into, well, what are the consequences of having a record and having it be whether publicly available or available to various government agencies? We found out that all the collateral consequences really compile and can follow a young person throughout their life for a long time. And these include impacting their ability to get housing, whether it's private and certainly government housing. It can split up families because you often can't get government housing if you have a record. We see that it impacts, and there's been movements to address it, but it impacts the ability to go towards secondary education. That not only would some schools maybe look negatively upon someone with a record, but it really impacts people's willingness, young people with system involvement. It impacts their willingness to even finish an application if a question about having a record or an adjudication is on that application, they never finish the application, a large percent. It also impacts employment and the willingness of employers to give opportunities. It impacts the ability of young people to go into the military. It could impact immigration matters for young people with documentation issues. So there's all sorts of ways that it continues to undermine and harm young people who've had system involvement from really taking the positive, productive steps that the juvenile system was really designed to create. Over the years after that, we started having discussions with various state actors in states around the country who wanted to make some changes to their laws. And as years passed, in 2020, we decided, all right, some time has passed, let's take another look. And so in 2020, we produced our second scorecard and really saw very little change. Not enough states were really making inroads in reintroducing confidentiality and expungement measures to protect, and there's still a lot of loopholes even where there is protection for records or expungement. Many offenses are excluded. There's very onerous processes and procedures that young people have to go through just to try to get expungement or sealing if it's available. So the scores were still, we give them mostly failing grades for most states. And we see that in Minnesota's as well, where there's expungement on the books, but it's not real expungement, it's sealing. So the records still exist. We really believe that in order to ensure a clean slate, you have to destroy records. Expungement is really destruction of records. And not just the court records, but the law enforcement records as well. In a lot of states, and Minnesota included, it's on the youth to petition. And what we've seen in a lot of states where the young person has to actually petition, is that very few actually end up making it through those hurdles. There's not notice provisions. How are they notified? Is it really user-friendly? Is it made so that they can really easily petition for expungement? And so all of these hurdles are in place when maybe the possibility to have confidentiality and protection is out there, but very few people actually succeed in getting it expunged if they're even aware. Because not only is the general public unaware, but most of those youth who go through the system aren't really aware that their records are going to follow them. They aren't given information and notice of what's going to happen after they leave the system, how a record could impact them, and what steps they need to take to secure it. So there are a lot of hurdles, and it's not unique to Minnesota. It's an issue that many states are grappling with. And one of the challenges is, as we've seen in the post-COVID world and during the COVID, is we see an uptick in crime across the board in cities around the country. And we're seeing an uptick in violent crime. Certainly it's been a really strong uptick here in Philadelphia. And I know that's happening around the country, and the political will that we were seeing before for reform and change, we're starting to lose some of that. We're starting to see a return to sort of a desire for law and order and taking drastic measures. But we have to remember that young people really are capable of change, that social science research backs it up, that brain science research backs it up. The Supreme Court has said it in its rulings, and in order to ensure our young people get the opportunities they truly deserve, making sure they leave the system, enter adulthood with that clean slate really has to be a central pillar of how we provide that kind of rehabilitation.
I thank you. I was taking copious notes. I think about Michelle Alexander and the new Jim Crow. However you look on the outside really determines what happens to you in these systems. And it's not something you can control what you look like and what people think about you. Well, first, let's go back just a minute. What is a public interest law firm? I don't know that everybody listening knows what that is. Can you tell us what that is?
Sure. So a public interest law firm, so we're largely an organization with lawyers. We have other staff as well who do, whether it's communications and fundraising, work with our youth advocates. But we really do a lot of, so the public interest is that we don't make a profit. I came from the private large firm background where billing and driving revenue, and that's not really what a public interest firm does. Is really we get our money from private donations and foundations, and all of it goes towards funding the work that we do that's really driven by serving public interest. And it's changed over the years, our focus. It's started from direct representation, but now we sort of do more large scale impact work, focusing on legislative policy change, advocacy, and also larger impact litigation.
Thank you. I know it's the question, the $1 million question everybody wants you to answer, but if there's one thing we can do in community, we just had a most recent tragedy here with young people, guns and death and all kinds of horrible things again. And what is something we can do in community, Andrew? What can we do to help?
Obviously I was, outside of this presentation, they say we need to fight to get rid of guns and get them out of our communities. But when it comes to records, I think the biggest piece to advocate for, to really shift the burden and ensure that more young people who are system involved get the protections that they should, is to really advocate for and push for automatic expungement, that it happens as soon as a case closes or the youth turns 18. That those records need to be automatically expunged. It shouldn't be, and that expungement should be the destruction of the records, rather than putting the burden on every individual youth who comes through the system to figure it out and petition and hope that their public defender, attorney, or counsel will notify them and walk them through steps and make sure it happens. It has to really happen from the system has to take care of it. It should be set up automatically. And also the education piece, really letting, we have to really break down this myth, because it really is damaging if people don't know that this stuff will follow them.
Andrew, I can't thank you enough. Sometimes liberation comes in myth busting, and we need to know the slate is not wiped clean, and the internet keeps a long record. Thank you, Andrew Keats, and thank you for your work. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Pleasure to be here with you.
Absolutely. Team, it's now my pleasure and privilege to introduce to you 2, and I hope maybe 3 panelists when it's all said and done. Sade Shahidi, would you please join us? Or join me, I guess, on screen. Fantastic. And Louis Blaze, the performer from whom we had the marvelous video, marvelous in terms of its production, of course, difficult in terms of its content. But we're hoping Louis Blaze will join us. Shahidi, welcome. I'm glad to see you.
It's crazy to be speaking with a legend, This is great.
Oh my goodness. Now I'm turning red. Thank you, Shahidi. I'm so glad you're here.
I didn't know
and
you
let
were
me see
today, so.
I'm sorry, beloved. You tell me what you said.
I said I didn't know you were going to be here today. I didn't know you were the host, so it's great to be here with you. So
Thank you. The feeling is mutual. I'm going to see if we can grab Sade. Are you here with Shahidi and I?
I'm here, but I don't want to be on camera.
Okay, that is no problem at all. That is entirely your choice. That's the beauty of freedom. You have agency. Thank you for being here.
No
In
problem.
addition, I did see a Louis join us, but I'm not sure if it's Louis Blaze or not. So I'm going to just call it out. Louis, was that you? Okay, well, Sade and Shahidi, we are in very good hands. Is it all right if we go ahead and get started?
Yes, ma'am.
let's get started.
All right, thank you both. Sade, let's start by asking, can you tell us about your experience with expungement? When you entered the juvenile justice system, what was your understanding about how that might impact your future? And when did you learn about the process for getting your record sealed?
Well, let's start. I was also on EJJ, and when I went to court, when I caught my case, I was 15. When I finally got sentenced and everything, I was 16. But the way they explained it to me and the way I thought that it worked was that I do this program, I complete all these programs, I do whatever they want me to do till I'm 21, and then my record goes away, as long as I don't get into any more trouble. Never got into any more trouble. My probation officer actually retired while I was on probation without me even noticing. So when I called, because he didn't really bother me because I was doing what I needed to do. So when I called to set up a meeting with him, they told me that he retired and that he told them that I was one of the kids that he didn't have to worry about. And I got off probation like 8 months early, maybe. So I'm a phlebotomist. So when I turned 21, I started working as a phlebotomist. I'm 36 now. So I worked for the Red Cross. I worked for a place called General Healthcare, where I went into schizophrenics homes and gave them their medicine and drew their blood. Then I worked at Abbott Northwestern for 8.5 years. And then I started looking for another job. Didn't want to be there. So then I started at HCMC. Everything was fine. I didn't like it there. I'm too sensitive. The trauma wasn't good for me. So I got a job at Park Nicollet. And then when they did my background, they sent me my offer letter, all of that. And then they did a background check. And all of a sudden my background started coming up. I'm 35 now. So I had to go through and call the juvenile records. Of course, they don't have them. I'm 36. That was 20 some years ago. I've been in my field for 13 plus years. Had my lawyer, that was my juvenile lawyer, was actually still there. So I talked to him, and then he explained to me that that's not how it works. And the crime that I committed, I can't work with vulnerable adults ever. So at 35, my life was kind of just snatched from me because I don't know nothing but phlebotomy. This is the career I chose to do. So we went through a whole bunch of stuff, and then I can't think of the name of the place I went to, and she helped me get it expunged. But I'm listening to you guys, and I don't think it got expunged. I think it got sealed again. So now I'm just I don't know. But I just feel like as a teenager, okay, I got into some stuff. I'm 36 now, gonna be 37. I ain't done nothing to nobody. I've been working with vulnerable adults my whole adult life. And now you're telling me that I can't. So, yeah. So I had to start over. Well, I did all that stuff. And now I am currently looking for a job because of something that I did when I was 15. And I think it's stupid, and I don't think kids should have to go through that once they are adults. To be quite frankly, I think that if you're going to put a kid on EJJ and control the rest of their childhood, and tell them if you complete this program that when you become an adult, it won't affect you, that it shouldn't be able to come back and affect them.
Sade, I want to say thank you. I'm so deeply sorry.
You're
Shahid,
welcome.
thank you. Shahid, will you tell us about your experience, please?
Yeah, can you reiterate the question just so I can I was really taken in by what Sade was talking about. So
Thank you for that. I needed to be reminded myself to say the question again. Thank you, Shahidi. Can you tell us about your experience with expungement? What did you think you knew when you got involved? And what was really different? Ultimately, how has it impacted you in your life? And how did you learn about the process for getting your records sealed?
So what's crazy is I knew about expungement for a couple years, and it's always been on my mind to be able to get my record expunged. I found out, actually, I knew that I was going to be eligible after you have to finish up your probational period. So after you finish up your probational period, depending on the level of your offense, if it's a misdemeanor or gross or felony, if it's, I think it's a gross misdemeanor, you have to wait like 2 years after your probational period for you to be eligible. And I think it's like a year after your probational period. I don't know if that's different by the state. So I waited until after my period of after probation, you have to wait to a certain time. And I've heard about the expungement process. I didn't know if it was real or not. So I went on to seek some volunteer network lawyer resources and whatnot. And one actually I went to, and I'm not going to say the name of the organization, but I went to them and confided in them and gave them my information and my court information. And they actually told me that I wasn't eligible for expungement until like another 2 years. I ain't gonna lie, I almost cried, but I went and found another volunteer network organization. I'm actually blanking on the name, but I know the individual. The name is Bo. She's a phenomenal lawyer. She looked at my case it was actually last year. Was it last year? It's because it's a new year, right? I'm getting confused. But I just got my record expunged like in March of 2022. So I put the paperwork in. It was so much work. I ain't gonna even front. Like I still got one of these envelopes. I need to take like 32 of these envelopes. It has all this envelope, literally has all my court, everything inside of it. I had to take all those copies, mail them out to every department, like every department, court, police, record, everything, and mail them all out. I got within like 2-3 months of filling all that paperwork out and getting all approved. Actually, the judge that actually sentenced me one time was the guy who actually, Judge Castro, a phenomenal judge within Ramsey County. Actually, he expunged my record immediately. I think through that, I just learned you really have to advocate for yourself. I caught my record actually within college. I was in the middle of school and I just got caught up with the law. I didn't think I would ever be a person who will have a record, but I did. And it literally prevented me from so many job opportunities. I was constantly advocating for myself. I ended up going to a whole career of youth work with a record. And I mean, I was always able to advocate for myself, but sometimes I wasn't able to get a job at like a gas station, or I couldn't get a job. I couldn't find places to rent. There's a lot of different advocacy programs that I found throughout that process, but it was difficult. Like it's crazy because I see some people inside this Zoom who I used to work with, and they probably didn't know that I had a record, but I would never really tell people that I have a record. And I mean, I used to work with the YMCA and working with kids on EJJ. I'm sitting here serving kids, like being a community specialist and whatnot. And like low key, I have a record myself, but I was able to work with them, but still just navigating that system. It was challenging. And I actually walked away from youth work because I think it came up at some point that like I couldn't work with kids no more. And it was just stressful, and dealing with systemic pressures of working with youth and youth of color and having a record. I kind of walked away from it and I ended up going into the tech field. But I feel like a success story now. So it's crazy to be on the other side like 10 years later. But my 20s was all just about struggling and trying to navigate having a record. And yeah, that's why I came here today. Somebody randomly asked me to come and speak out. And there's so many people in this room, but I don't even remember what the initial question was.
You did beautifully,
I feel like
Shady.
I answered it pretty well. So
You did beautifully. You did beautifully. Thank you. You know, what happens to a dream deferred? What happens when we pigeonhole young people and say that they have no opportunity, and that we, the people who often put them by policy in the bad places, are the ones who can help them get out? Welcome, Louis Blaze. Thank you for your performance, and thank you for being here. Will you please tell us a bit about your experience with the whole juvenile system, with the situation of sealing records? What's been your experience, Louis?
Well, first and foremost, it's an honor to be here. Thank you all for having me. Hello, Miss Lisa Jones, the amazing Lisa. I love it when you facilitate. What's up, Shahidi? It's good to see you, my brother. Extremely talented musician.
how you doing, man?
Shout out to Youthprise in the building. You know, shout out to Legal Rights Center. My people up in here. I feel like it was just yesterday when we were having a conversation during one of our Minnesota Youth Justice Coalitions, and you know, we met with I believe it was like the Juvenile Youth Council or something like that over in Hennepin County, and we was highlighting expungement and how we need to really break this system down and expedite the process. That was my call to action, is expedite the process, right? So yeah, just to go back, when I was 16 years old, I was convicted of a aggravated robbery, and I eventually was on EJJ as well. So I had to complete EJJ up to the age of 21. So I was on probation for 5 years, you know, and dealing with that. And also navigating a lot of things in my personal life as well. And yeah, actually, when I very first heard about like the expungement process, right? So actually, before I get there, as a young person, you're not really thinking about expungement, you know, especially in like my living conditions where I was in. You know, all I knew is that I'd have been charged, I'd have been labeled a criminal, and now I'm on probation, right? So I'm not even thinking about expungement or my future. Like, it was very hard to even have that vision. But as I started getting older and started getting close to the end of my probation period, I remember having a conversation about expungement. I don't think it was with a probation officer. I think it was just like with some other young guys in the space, because we was talking about this being on our record. If somebody was like, no, this is supposed to be off our record because like we young, and I heard that it's supposed to like just disappear off your record after like a couple of years. That was the narrative. That was the rumor that I heard, right? Rumor has it. Shout out to Adele. And so I was under the illusion that like after I could successfully complete my probation, right, at 21, when I get to like 23, it'll be gone. I didn't know I had to go through a process and fill out paper and do a bunch of things. And I really didn't think about the expungement, you know, process until I actually applied to be my mother's official PCA worker. This when my mother was still here. And I was just looking to, you know, do some. I've already been taking care of her as a young man, you know, and I just had a family member that suggested that like we should take that process and become official. And I believe it was so like the company had to pass the background checks through the Minnesota, I think the Minnesota Department of Health or Human Services, one of those departments. Long story short, they sent back that I failed the background check. And it was like a big rep roll, like, what? I failed the background check. And then it hit my mind like, yeah, the only situation I got is when I was young, but I thought it was supposed to be gone. So that's when I was informed that it was still on my record and it could prevent, you know, further opportunities to have certain positions and things of that nature apply for different jobs, as we heard before. So I could even take care of my mother. I mean, through PCA officially, you know, that didn't stop me. I'm gonna still take care of my mom, right? I don't need the money to do it. You know, but we were in a position in our life to where that would have been very helpful, you know, with our situation and our living conditions and the circumstances we were in, right? You know, and it was something that she was really advocating for. I really did it for her. You know, it was her idea, you know, that we should go ahead and do that. And then to find out that, you know, we couldn't make it happen because her son still had, you know, this on his record, you know, it was very disheartening, you know, it was very frustrating. And I began to ask questions like, okay, so how do I get it off my record? And then that's when I was informed that I think it was Christy Snyder shared a story that she was working with a young woman and it took them like over a year to get her record clear, you know, through expungement. And it just blew my mind. And I'm like, I'm a patient guy. I promise you I'm patient, but it's just to a certain extent, it's just certain things just don't make sense to me. And this is one of the things that don't make sense is why does it take over a year for a young person's record to be expunged when they've served their time, right? Especially like I was in a position where I began to change my narrative and I was on the other side of the fence, like Shahidi say, being a success story, right? Doing great community work. My work has been recognized across multiple news platforms, like people know what's going on. And to still not be able to be certified because I still got this on my record is just ridiculous, But right now, I just want to say I'm very grateful for this space and for this community that's coming together and highlighting these issues and really putting in the work that it takes to transform the way we see the system today. And I'm a very honored and grateful person to say I'm currently working at Ramsey County for the Healing Streets organization. It's a community-based organization rooted in decreasing group and gun violence. And I'm actually reporting to you all live right now from Red Wing, the actual facility. We up here from 2 to 4, building with our young people, offering mentorship and doing these group facilitations. And it's been amazing, so I'm grateful that I can be able to be in this position. But even for me to be in this position, it took a lot of strings to be pulled, so shout out to our director, Danny Givens, and the amazing work he's doing over at Ramsey County. And we didn't have leaders like that or leaders like you all, voices like mine would just go unheard in these spaces. So thank you.
Thank you, Louis. The most dangerous creation in any society is the creation of a man with nothing to lose. That's James Baldwin. And we set children up, young people, to think that they have nothing to lose. It takes 24 hours to get a charge and a year and something to get it off. It's not right. We have just 1 minute each for each of you to just give us a response to this question, if you would, and then we'll go to Q&A. If you could change one thing about the current expungement practice, Shahidi, Sade, Louis, what would it be? Shout it out.
I think, okay, so EJJ, that's the thing. EJJ, if someone completes EJJ, I feel like their records should already automatically be expunged. Like, you go through so much from the time you get your case to the time that you get off probation at 21 with not even being able to really have a childhood anymore because you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do that. You can't go outside with your friends because you got a curfew at 9 o'clock. And then for you to become an adult and it's still there, why not just go serve my time?
Brilliant, Sade. Thank you. Shahidi?
I think I showed you all those envelopes, that envelope earlier. When you have to fill out the envelope, fill out for an expungement, you have to, I remember when I had to do it, I had to go to the public library and I was there for like 5 hours printing out paperwork. I mean, we live in 2023 and I think being able to have a better system in place or some type of system that can be an electronical process. And I know courts, they love their paperwork, so that's an issue, but there needs to be some type of organization that can expedite that process, at least be able to create some type of advocacy in terms of, making that a more frivolous or convenient process so that when you do or want to actually start the expungement, you won't feel overwhelmed with all these places of where you need to submit this paperwork to. And also, I think there just needs to be more, I think honestly that could be huge. So I'm just gonna leave it with that. Actually make the process more easy to do, I think would be a good step forward.
Excellent. One thing I ask myself is that why the process is so bad in the first place? So we do give up. What do you think, Louis? What's your wisdom that you want to drop down?
I really love what both of y'all just said, Sade and Shahidi. Yeah, maybe, maybe the city or the county, should take some of these dollars that are sitting around and hire a team of folks that could work on this every single day. I feel like people just don't take the expungement process serious, and like they want to lollygag, set stuff off to like 3 months because we got to wait for, committees to meet up and things like that. that's dead, man. Get a team of folks that can work on this every single day. Make this a whole new job position. You know, there's a lot of people out there that need some work anyway. So yeah, let's expedite the process for sure.
You know, you three are just brilliant in your own right. And you remind me of the poet Janata Petrus when she says, why don't we give the police department to the grandmothers? Right? We could fix all of this if we gave it to the grandmothers. We wouldn't have any need for expungement or all of that. You know, I'm so proud of each of you. All right, team. Is there anything that anybody would like to ask these brilliant people, because they won't be here for long on our Zoom? So if there's anything you want to know, put it in the chat, please, and we will check it out. Otherwise, what's one thing you want to leave with the audience? What's the thing you want them to take back with them? And, you know, in a minute or so, each of you, if you don't mind, and you can go in any order you wish, of course. I do want to challenge the audience to ask, maybe you could contact the proper authorities and ask them, how many young people do we have in EJJ in Minnesota? And what is the demographic makeup of the people who are in EJJ?
I'll go ahead and I think one thing that, I mean, when I agreed to do this, I mean, I didn't even want to use my actual name, so I used my artist name. But I guess if you use my artist name, you'll find me. But I really just wanted to make sure that I was able to share my story, because I think it was difficult. Like I'm a very emotional driven person. I've cried many of times because I didn't have opportunities. So I think this subject of being able to be here to even, you know, advocate for youth. And I used to be a youth advocate. I think I still am a youth advocate. It's really important there needs to be more advocacy around criminalizing of our communities. You said you're in Red Wing, Louis Blaze. Like, I've been there working with kids in the YMCA, and it's crazy. Those boys are 13, 14 years old and they're locked up, you know, and then they get back in society and they're just trying to go to school and just trying to get a job, and they can't, you know what I'm saying? So the mere fact that there needs to be more advocacy around this. I was unfortunate to catch a record and be able to see the positives just as of the last couple of years. But I think the biggest thing is if you are having a record, like, just stay at it, stay focused, keep advocating for yourself. Like, I deal with so many declines, but like, you know, and keep dreaming. I think that was the biggest thing, is I really leaned on my art. I'm also a musician outside of being a software engineer now. I really leaned on my music. A lot of my music was based on Black male vulnerability, and just being able to create space for us to be. And I think it's important for us to create more spaces for people to be able to tell their stories, but then also provide them resources and tools to be able to help them. I mean, that's my minute. I could keep going, but I'm gonna just stop because a lot of people speak.
That is excellent. I just want to insert, before we have our last 2 minutes, that President Marcus Pope, the president of Youthprise, has written in the chat that he would like to know where you are in your expungement process. You do not need to answer this publicly, but he would like to know how Youthprise can support you. That is how philanthropy makes a difference. That's how we impact, doing something radically different than what everybody else is doing. Thank you, President Pope. Sade, would you drop a moment of wisdom down on us? Louis, I'm sorry to people in the chat, we are at time, but Sade, Louis, would you give us a thought? It doesn't have to be in that order.
So with EJJ being not EJJ as a kid, first of all, I feel like there needs to be a team to work with EJJ. Yeah, I went to my meetings every week. Yeah, I took a UA every week, but I had family, and then I had Mama Shai, which is the youth advocate. I was a peer educator for the HAS program. A lot of kids didn't have that, so they didn't want to go home, so they got thrown in a group home. Well, who wants to live in a group home with no money? Then so then they are back in the streets again. So then they fail the EJJ system. I feel like there needs to be a team, a real team of people who actually almost care about our youth and what they're doing, and not just saying, oh, if you complete this program, but we don't really think you're going to complete this program, so we're going to make it as difficult as possible for you. And then you're still going to have to go do your time, to where people in the community that have actually been through this and can say, hey, look, if you do this, this is how you do this, this is how you do that. You know, there is a brighter future for whoever is on EJJ or who's ever in the juvenile system. They need people that care.
That's fundamental. Thank you, Sade. And Louis, will you bring us home in 1 minute? I'm so sorry to give you only that minute.
Look, that's all I need is a minute. I would just say, just stay consistent with this work, you know. And then I want to reiterate what Chrissy said in the chat. It's not just EJJ, you know, like all records need to be sealed, you know. And I often think about, you know, a lot of my brothers who have, you know, served their time and did amazing work, you know, and then they don't have the right to their they don't have their Second Amendment right as well, you know. So I think about these things and the pardoning process and all of this, you know, and we start here though. So I most definitely just want to leave y'all with just the inspiration, you know, to keep on going and stay consistent. And actually everybody make sure y'all go check out that website and Youth Prisons campaign. Make sure y'all support the movement. You know, we stick together, because if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together.
One queen and two kings. Don't ever, ever let any record take that from you. I am glad to see you all. And I am so glad we are part of the same community so I can hold you close. Thank you for your courage in coming today. Thank you for your courage in sharing your stories. You are beloved. And as Brian Stevenson reminds all of us, we are more than the worst thing we've ever done. And for most of us, we've done a whole bunch of things we've never paid for. So we need to be mindful. Thank you, beauties, every one of you. I'll see you again soon. It's now my privilege to pivot to the next group of people who will share with us a bit of their expertise. I would like to welcome forward Emmanuel Williams, Andrew Keats, Marissa Klein, and Dawn Trimarco. Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having us.
Oh, I'm thrilled to see all of you. Thank you so much for being here. As you experienced just a moment ago, that's a powerful, powerful group to follow. So we will do our best to set everybody up for success if we can, to keep on time. And so that in the interest of giving you the most time, Emmanuel, from your experience working in the Attorney General's office and now at the Legal Rights Center, can you tell us from your perspective how the expungement process actually works and share your thoughts on what needs to change?
Yeah, absolutely. Before I get started, I would love to just, take a little time to thank all of those previous panelists. That was incredible to hear those stories. A lot of those stories apply directly to a lot of the work that I, and I'm sure a lot of people in this group do. But from my personal experience and my perspective working with the AG's office and their, newer expungement program, and then working with the Legal Rights Center and our expungement program, without, complicating the matter, expungement is just hard. It's extremely hard for people to go through that process. Not only, just the technical and legal aspects of it, but it's emotionally hard, it's mentally hard. And a lot of people don't understand, but for many who don't qualify for the waiver, it's extremely financially hard to go forth in that process. So, I would say that just from my perspective, moving forward with expungement and the process that we have here in Minnesota, I agree with everyone. We have to make the process easier. We have to make it automated. We have to automatically, relieve a lot of those records for juveniles, because in honesty, it shouldn't be on the youth who are still developing, still trying to, put their feet in the ground and become the adults that they will be. It's on us, the system, the legal system, to really provide them that avenue of giving them that second chance and allowing them to become the people that they are so driven in being. What really spoke to me about the last panelists with Shahidi, Sade, Louis, they all had a similar concept of they weren't done, growing into the people they were. And when we don't automate expungement, we don't allow these youths to have the education to move forward with expungement. We're taking those nurses, we're taking those teachers, we're taking those youth advocates out of the community without ever giving them a chance to really be who they are.
I can't thank you enough, Emmanuel. What if that person, whoever that person is, has the cure for cancer? What if they can stop famine? What if they could stop war? But we won't expunge. It's a common Dawn. In your experience helping young people gain employment, how does having a record impact gaining employment? And how do you work around those challenges? Thank you, Emmanuel.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for the question. I love what you both were just saying. Is it made me think of some of the best workers are those with lived experience. So nobody should ever be taken out of an equation because of a past record. I have very strong feelings about the fact that I don't think any juvenile records should be public at all, ever. A lot of people also don't know that juvenile records at ages, 16 and up, felonies are accessible to the public. So there's so much that people don't know is really out there. I'm very blessed as a youth worker of over 20 years at Hired to have learned these things, to be able to coach and assist the many youth, the hundreds of youth that I've worked with and young adults over the years. So one of the things that I think is really important that I discuss with all my youth and young adults and even adults is to always be prepared that this question may come up in the interview, or if it doesn't come up at the interview, it may come up at the job offer. So to always be preparing them and coaching them and guiding them on how to answer the question, can you tell me about your record if you have a record? Can you tell me about it? So there's ways that I coach them, each one of them, even if they never get asked, you just never know. So that's one thing that I feel I can help do is help them prepare to answer that question. Because if they're not prepared to answer that question, oftentimes one will get nervous, they'll overspeak, they'll say too much, they'll say too little. And I found that many employers over the years will give a young person a chance. Unless their employer has a hard line against not hiring somebody with a felony or a crime against persons, many will give a chance as long as the young person and the young adult is in there and talking in a way where they're taking responsibility, where they're kind of softening the language of the offense that was committed. So again, preparing them is very important. And that's one of the things that I coach and that we work on. Another thing, it really broke my heart when Sade was talking about her experience is, I know that through the work that I've done, but only through the work that I've done, that there are definitely some fields where at some point one's record may prevent them from being licensed through the state of Minnesota. So another thing, when I'm listening to youth and I'm talking to them about their passions and their interests and their goals, and we're making plans, I want to make sure if they're talking about some of these fields, such as healthcare, that's one of them that we're talking about. Okay, schools will take your money. They aren't necessarily running background checks. So I don't necessarily say that they are responsible, but when it comes to the licensing in the state of Minnesota, that's where it gets challenging. And so I'm so sorry to hear that happened. And that's where I would really like to see changes. I feel that when people have quote, paid their debt to society, done what they've done, that they have every right as those who weren't involved in the justice system to have all the same opportunities. So I would like to see that change. Privatizing those records, expungement is automatic, especially if we're talking EJJ and juvenile records, and making the system much easier to get through. So I'm one of those advocates out there that fortunately I'm blessed through the work that I do to be able to help with those things.
Thank you.
So thank you so much.
Thank you, Dawn. I'd like the community to consider that we're in the middle of pandemic, and I'm not talking about the medical pandemic. I'm talking about the alcohol and drug pandemic we're in, and that one of the licenses that is most threatened oftentimes is the licensed alcohol and drug counselor. Many of the people have lived experience, and it unfortunately involves experience with the legal system. And so if you don't have enough people to make enough doctors to help you get well, what happens to our society? So the cost is not just to the people who are experiencing this, it's a cost to all of us. Thank you, Dawn. Marissa, you're in a similar line of work. Would you talk to us a little bit about how you help young people through the expungement process? And from your experience at hired and now in probation, how can the process be corrected, improved? I don't even know if I can say improved, but you know, the spirit of the question.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me. I actually did help a young lady through the expungement process, and we were successful. Her record was expunged. She was looking to go into the nursing field, and because of a juvenile charge, it was preventing her from, achieving that goal. The main thing was the length of time. It was during COVID. So obviously things were probably running a little bit different, but I mean, just the paperwork we had to fill out, it's not all in layman terms, right? I mean, there were some things like I was reaching out to other people to help get a better explanation, to help advise her, to make sure that she was filling it out properly, and really just being that solid person in her life, to continue to give that support in every step, because it wasn't just we filled it out, we mailed it off, we faxed it, and it was done. She saw a judge. There were a lot of paperwork got sent back, reaching out to a juvenile PO to make sure she had the right documentation to include. It definitely is a process. And I also will say the trauma and the triggers of going back into a courtroom in front of a judge can be very stressful. It's not, their last time in there wasn't pleasant, or they agreed with the charge or took a plea deal or whatever that may look like. However, it was still life-changing, and to not be guaranteed that it will be changed for the better after all of this work is it can be wearing on someone. Something that I would say to help improve, not necessarily, we've all kind of talked about the expungement, which I'm agreeing with, right? It should be automatic. However, with juveniles especially, the education and more education and more education. I mean, they're still learning and trying to get through high school, right? I mean, the workload just at school, let alone the holistic approach if things are going well at home, if they have food on the table. I mean, there's just so many other factors that a young person takes on, and not just focusing on, the expungement process, which is lengthy. So actually, I mean, I am a probation officer now and with the adult world, but that doesn't take away my passion from the youth world at all. And really making sure that there are systems in place and that there are, nonprofits. I used to work for the YMCA with the juvenile probation intervention specialist, and just being able to be another voice for them and bridging that gap between probation and the young person. It's, not every juvenile gets along with their PO, and not every PO, I think, maybe wants to be a PO, or they're burnt out. I mean, it's a hard job, but it's hard for the youth too, and meeting each individual where they're at, because it's not a one shoe fits all. It's not, every single youth has a different raising, a different background, and different future goals. So I think having like a transitional worker, whether that be through the county, and let's make more jobs, right? Let's give more people work, and helping those juveniles with the process, so right when they're done with probation or whatever the length period is, they have that advocate in their corner from the jump. It's not them reaching out. It's not them hitting a roadblock in there, wanting to continue their education, getting a job. It's not the upset because no one wants to fail, right? I mean, I always say that we're all one decision from being on the other end of the table.
That's the truth.
Yeah, so it really is just having that person in their corner before they hit the discouragement. So yeah, that would be my suggestion on the
Excellent. Thank you, Marissa. An ounce of prevention's worth a pound of cure. How about if we don't send kids to jail in the first place, huh? I mean, we could do a whole bunch. And Andrew, I want you to bring us home before we go to Q&A with this panel. You talked about the idea that the misconception exists in pop culture that when a juvenile person enters adulthood, blink, their record is clean, and you say no. So how do we go about fighting that misconception?
I think what we're doing here today is one of the primary ways, especially hearing voices like Louis and Sade and Shahidi. These stories are powerful. They tell, within these stories are the real world impacts. It's not just, statistics or numbers or the facts of how the system works, but these are, you see hardworking people who are trying to do the right thing, who are having barriers put up in front of them everywhere they turn that they're having to climb over. And some people are successful in doing that, but how many are being left behind? And I'd be remiss if, I think one of the elephants in the room in this discussion is always race. This is who's being impacted, right? This is, and Lissa, you sort of said it in the beginning. Look at Michelle Alexander's work. We went from Jim Crow to mass incarceration, and Jim Crow was a step away from slavery. The 13th Amendment gave Congress the power to not only end slavery, which they did, but to regulate the badges of slavery. This is a record, a juvenile record, a criminal record, is just another badge that who carries. I saw one of the questions raised was, for the rest of society, why should they care about this issue? And it's like, you got to care about, if you care at all about equality, if you care at all about opportunity for those who've historically and systematically been oppressed. These records just continued that history and that long road of continued repression and discrimination. It creates a legal mechanism to discriminate against largely Black and brown young people and former system involved folks. And we have to look at it that way. And on the other side, we have to look at, if you really do care about public safety, this isn't the way to do it. Keeping people from being productive citizens isn't going to create a safer community. Keeping people from opportunity isn't going to keep people out of crime. It pushes them back into it, because that's the only option you have. So we just need to keep telling these stories, calling our representatives, telling them how much this matters, not letting records get sort of swept under the rug. We have so many problems, so many issues as communities, as societies, our states. We're faced with so many challenges, but these records are just a massive weight that hangs around the neck of those who've gone through the system, and we need to take that weight off them. We as a society, as a community, need to build the structures that we're talking about here: automatic expungement, destroy these records, take it off the backs of the young people who've already done the work, who've gone through EJJ, as y'all have been talking about. It's our job to make sure they have the opportunities and the path to lead positive, productive lives when they come out. And it takes all of us. It's not the responsibility of those who made some mistake. And the reason that they have this record is because their communities, their families are the ones being policed. Their schools are the ones filled with police officers and public resource officers. It wasn't mine, but so I got to make mistakes in a consequence-free environment, and so many other of our youth don't. And we're putting the burden on them to then climb all the obstacles to get out.
I am so thankful that you brought forward the tradition of Sankofa for African Americans, looking backward to understand how to go forward. The 13th Amendment has everything to do with why we're here. Harriet Tubman and Frederick Douglass were accused of stealing their own bodies. They were labeled thieves. I mean, that is utterly ridiculous. So it is incumbent upon us to know our history and to know how it impacts our present, because it will take that kind of understanding to change it. I want to say thank you, Marissa and Dawn, Andrew and Emmanuel, Marissa, Dawn, and Andrew. And I meant to say that twice. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. I appreciate everything. The information has been invaluable, and I will hope that we will cross paths again. Thank you for your time. I'd now like to welcome back Sade, Shahidi, and Louis. Thank you, President Pope, for recognizing we don't have to send children to jail in the first place, and for your wonderful things in the chat. My chat is acting very strange. I don't know why, but you're exactly right. If you are in a certain kind of skin or you live in a certain kind of neighborhood, you are able to make mistakes and you don't go to jail and you don't pay the consequences. I graduated from the Blake schools, and I can tell you that the minute I went into the village, the rules changed. And the minute I went back to Blake, the rules changed. And those kids didn't do a whole bunch of time. So bless you, President Pope. So I think it's important to recognize what adultification and race and gender do when we're talking about the intersection of youth and expungement. Welcome back, Shahidi, Sade, and Louie. Come on back. There you are.
I'm here.
Thank you. Sade, Shahidi, I would like to ask you if you could give the audience a call to action. What do you want them to do? You've told them about your experience. You've been willing to be vulnerable. You've been willing to talk about it all, things that many, many of us would not be willing to do. So what's your call? What are we to do in response so things can change?
I really think there just needs to be a lot of gaps need to be filled. I mean, the criminal justice system and the justice system at all is kind of a beast, and we're all aware of that. And there's a lot of lines that you can. It's just it's a big beast. I'm not always able to articulate myself, but I think one thing we can do is put more funding towards filling these gaps, having more advocacy organizations for youth. As I work for the YMCA, and there was whole department called intervention, and I don't even know if that's even around anymore. I think it still is around, but there needs to be more money invested inside that organization, because they did a lot of work trying to fill in the gaps of EJJ and the probation officers in terms of advocating for youth. The same needs to be do that for people who aren't youth, actual adults, 19 through 20, 30, if you ask me. There needs to be more advocacy and funding put in towards a career pathways, and actually building sponsorships and relationships with organizations that are actually going to hire them. It's one thing to say that if your record is, or you can find jobs, there's jobs out there, but if there's no relationships already built where they can actually go in and go get hired within the week, then you're pretty much sending them out there to fail. The same thing is needed for housing. The same thing needed that for education. The same thing is needed that for more advocacy. There's tons of advocacy for women and children. I think you also need more advocacy for men in general, in terms of creating opportunities and space for them to grow and develop, but just for people of color in general as well. And also more opportunities for felons, because it's like, if you're a felon, you're pretty much like screwed. And I think there definitely needs to be a lot more advocacy around, God, bless me, I didn't catch a felony, but I got close to it. I ain't gonna even front. So, and it's like, we need to create more, have more funding and roles and positions and advocacy around that, in terms of everything from housing to education to job placement. And that's the call to action, is that there needs to be a lot more work done. I found a lot of security within actually the tech space, just in the last couple of years of getting educated, and I found some organizations. I actually put a link inside the chat of Emerging Works. They're doing a lot of good work in terms of creating opportunities for coders who are felons to get into the industry, just because some of the startup companies don't require background checks, and just getting that around there. And tech is the future. You get a job in the tech industry, you're making a lot more of an average individual. So I just think we need to be more innovative, more understanding. We need to be forgiving, and we need to understand that a lot of people are set up to fail to begin with. So why aren't we trying? We literally have to hold these people's hands, hold each other's hands until they can get to the other side. And to be able to be here and tell this story, like literally so many people held my hand.
I can't wait. I can see you in the village and give you a big old hug. That's what I want to do. Mm-hmm.
So, that's my call to action, but yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Sade?
He pretty much said it all. Like, I agree with him, but we need more people that are going to actually be passionate. Like, if you're just doing this because it's something to do, or you want your name out there, if you're not passionate, if you really don't care. Like I worked at the hospital for a long time. I told plenty of nurses like that was having a bad day and said, I hate my job. If you hate your job, you need to find a different job because you're taking care of people. You can't take care of a person if you don't want to do it. So we need more passionate people.
That is something that I just can't underscore enough. Cornel West said, if you got to serve the people, you got to love the people. And we have a love problem. Andrew, Marissa, Emmanuel, Dawn, we have about a minute each. If either any of you would like to make a call to action, please.
I think for me, you know, hearing these powerful stories, hearing what people have to say, my call to action really, especially to any of the youth that are watching, young adults, this is our time with the Clean Slate Act that, you know, we could really pass that with some teeth, joining these conversations, but more importantly, you know, having these conversations with your peers, with youth in the community, you know, looking out for each other in the community. Because a lot of times, you know, we have heard examples where, you know, you go through the legal system and your attorney is worried about the consequences now, but not the collateral consequences down the road. It's up to us as a community, us as brothers, sisters, cousins, fathers, mothers, and friends to look out for each other, knowing that those collateral consequences are coming down the road, and not only holding the system accountable, but holding ourselves accountable to make sure that no one is left behind or swept under the rug.
Excellent. Thank you, Emmanuel. 1 minute, Marissa, Dawn, Andrew.
I'll just back up a little. What Emmanuel said is let's pass this Clean Slate Act. You know, talk to your friends, talk to the folks in your community, get on the phone with your representatives, organize, get this passed, because getting automatic expungement, getting it off the backs of the young people who've been impacted by the system and having the system do the work is such a critical piece. It's going to benefit, you know, thousands of youth immediately once that gets implemented. That piece is so critical, passing the right laws to change the system.
Excellent. Expungement, not sealing. I hear you, Andrew. Thank you. Dawn, Marissa, you want to drop a minute on us?
I don't have much else to add other than, you know, keep being consistent in these young people's lives and helping them until the Clean Slate Act is passed, right? Like, we need to keep doing the work we're doing until we can get the right laws in place, so we can still help, but you know what I mean?
I love that. We got to keep going. We have to keep going, Marissa, until we win the race. I hear you. Thank you. And Dawn, is there anything you'd like to leave us with?
A minute is not much time for me. I got so much to say about it, but I will just say, please never give up. I have had many hard conversations with many people who maybe didn't start with any empathy in their heart. But once we bring real talk, real conversations, real people, then they can start to see things differently. So, and even when our young people don't believe in themselves, we fill in that belief. Always believe in them. Never stop believing in them. There's a success in everyone.
Hope and humanity. If we see it in each other, we can fix this. I always figured that we made this problem so we can fix it if we want to. So let's fix it. We can pass the Clean Slate Act. We can work on expungement. We can fix this. And we can take it off of the backs of the young people on whose backs we put it. I want to say thank you to the courageous Youthprise, to President Marcus Pope and his team. I want to say thank you to Claim Our Space. I want to say thank you to everybody who showed up in this conversation today. I hope you will make it a verb. Don't take what you know and leave it here. Use it so we can make change a verb. In the meantime and in between time, we hope you will come back and see us again in March for the next installment of Disrupting with Purpose. I am your host, Lissa Jones, and it is always my privilege and pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me, and take good care. And please ask yourself every day, so how are the children?